I'm a student and I work at the Translational Genomics Research Institute in downtown Phoenix. And after reading pages and pages of research articles and culturing millions of cells, I'm trying to figure out how brain cancer works. And a big part of that is asking the question, why do men get cancer more than women?
Most cancers have a male bias. In some cases, it's small, 20 or 30% higher in males, and in some cases, much larger, 2 or 3 or even 4 times higher for certain cancers in males compared to females.
Why this is such a big question. Despite studying cancers for centuries, scientists still quite don't know what makes men more susceptible to most cancers than women. But maybe some of these clues of sex differences in cancer can help us treat cancer better. Cancer occurs when the body's own machinery for producing cells goes haywire, and the body can no longer control the millions of dividing cells. Environmental factors like exposure to nuclear radiation and poor working conditions have been known to cause cancer.
Historically, men were the ones that were working in coal mines, and they were working in manufacturing settings. They were exposed to asbestos more, and all of these things increased their rates of cancer compared to female.
Yet women started working a lot more in industrial jobs and smoking a lot more, and the sex-based differences between men and women for the cancer rates really didn't change. And scientists were prompted to ask if a deeper biological factor was at play.
And it was incredibly obvious. They were all on the X chromosome. There are 20,000 genes in the whole genome, and why would this, first group of a handful be all on the X chromosome? And to the person I was working with, he was, we're looking at sex differences. Of course it's on the X chromosome, but that blew my mind.
Every male cell has an X and Y chromosome, and every female cell has 2 X chromosomes. A 2016 study by Harvard doctor Andrew Lane showed that essentially X chromosomes have a lot more cancer-protecting factors than Y chromosomes, and women have 2 X chromosomes. Thus, female cells had way better protection against cancer than male cells. Additionally, it's seen that on the second X chromosome, which traditionally inactivates in women, that the cancer-reducing genes stay active, which simply do not exist for men, and thus provide more protection for women.
I took biology and I learned about how X and Y chromosome work, and I knew about X inactivation. And in my mind, I just thought that one X chromosome was closed off and shut down in every cell in a female. I didn't discover escape from X inactivation. Plenty of smart cell biologists had done that already, but we were able to connect that phenomenon with the list of genes that we found that had this male bias in their mutation pattern. And that really was the moment that it kind of clicked.
So one big difference is that women have more cancer-reducing genes on their chromosomes. But this isn't the only difference at play. Men and women are different hormonally, but there is an even more intrinsic evolutionary difference at play. And Dr. Rubin goes on to explain how this really came to fruition.
Throughout mammals, females live significantly longer than males do. There's growing evidence that females really need to live into grandmother ages to provide grandmother support for their children in the rearing of their grandchildren. That requires living a long time, and it requires expending resources on longevity.
The National Institute of Health has mandated that research studies include sex as a biological variable, which has begun to expand our understanding on its importance.
Children from birth until puberty had sex differences in cancer incidence and outcome that were actually quite similar to those in adults. And adults including early post-pubertal adolescents, adults, all the way to postmenopausal adults. There are sex differences. So clearly they can't be a consequence of circulating sex hormones, and they can't just be a consequence of exposures and habits. There has to be an element of biology underneath that's intrinsic to being male or female.
Thus, considering the innate differences between male and female cells, it has become ever more important to understand how these differences are at play for cancer as well as other diseases. It's really easy to generalize, and as we're moving toward more patient-centered care, it's vital to understand how these differences work, especially in sex and genetics.